Welcome to AI Debates. The central question today is Zohran Mamdani's version of socialism good for New York and good for the United States? We'll cover 6 key areas where his platform is most debated: housing, wages, transit, education, taxation, and public safety. For each section, I'll set the context, then we'll hear a full argument, a retort, then switch sides. After each round, I'll request scores from Gemini and Grok, our impartial evaluators, to provide a quick sense of which side argued more convincingly. Let's begin.
On housing, the proposal to freeze rent increases in all rent-stabilized units sounds caring, but economists warn of unintended harm. Critics note that landlords need rent adjustments to cover maintenance and repairs. In fact, housing analysts stress that rent increases are needed to allow landlords to keep up with their costs, including building repairs and maintenance. Without that revenue, buildings could deteriorate. Moreover, some housing economists fear a rent freeze could discourage new construction, worsening the supply shortage. A Business Insider analysis cites experts saying frozen rents could discourage housing construction, further depressing the supply of homes. In a city starving for new units with apartment vacancy near a 50-year low, slowing development is risky.
I appreciate those concerns, but we must put tenants first. New Yorkers face an affordability crisis. Stabilized tenants are often low income and under threat of displacement. A temporary freeze on just these rent-stabilized apartments can provide immediate relief while we invest in affordable housing elsewhere. Many stabilized landlords are financially healthy. One report noted their average net income, adjusted for inflation, rose 8% recently, suggesting they can weather a pause on increases. The goal is protecting working families from sudden hikes. We'd pair a freeze with targeted aid for struggling landlords, so maintenance doesn't suffer, rather than raising rents across the board.
While I respect the intent, macroeconomics shouldn't be ignored. If all stabilized rents are frozen citywide, the aggregate effect is large. Landlords with slim margins, especially in older buildings, may cut corners. And when developers see capped revenue from rent-stabilized units, they might be less inclined to build or convert new housing under programs that require rents to remain stabilized. Ultimately, fewer new apartments will hit the market, putting more upward pressure on rents.
But remember, our policies include pro-construction measures too. Mamdani has talked about building 200,000 permanently affordable homes and easing zoning restrictions. And in the meantime, tenants need relief. Critics often emphasize supply-side fixes, but those take years. A responsible approach balances both. Freeze rents to stop displacement now and simultaneously invest in construction and preservation.
Thank you. We've heard arguments on immediate tenant relief versus long-term supply effects. We're going to go to Grok AI for its view on who came off stronger in this section of the debate.
Focusing on a proposed rent freeze for rent-stabilized units, the capitalist AI argued that such measures could lead to unintended consequences like reduced building maintenance, deterioration of properties, and discouraged new construction amid low vacancy rates, citing economic analyses that emphasize the need for rent adjustments to cover costs and stimulate supply. They scored a 9 out of 10 for strong evidence-based macroeconomic insights and responsiveness to counterpoints. Conversely, the socialist AI emphasized immediate tenant relief for low-income residents facing displacement, noting rising landlord incomes that could absorb a temporary freeze, while advocating for balanced approaches like targeted aid for landlords and pro-construction initiatives such as building 200,000 affordable homes and easing zoning. They scored an 8 out of 10 for effectively prioritizing equity and mitigations, but slightly underplaying long-term economic risks.
Thank you, Grok, for that input. The score stands at 9 points for capitalist AI and 8 points for socialist AI. We'll move on to labor policy next. The second policy is raising the minimum wage to $30 per hour by 2030. Let's discuss implications.
$30 an hour in New York isn't radical. It's reality. Try living in Manhattan on less. Rent, food, subway fare, it all adds up. Right now, millions of full-time workers still live in poverty. That's a broken system. A $30 floor would mean survival, not luxury.
Survival for some, collapse for others. Doubling the wage floor in 5 years? That's not reform, that's shock therapy. Small businesses, the diners, bodegas, salons, don't have the margins. They'll hike prices, cut jobs, or close. You can't pay $30 an hour with $3 pizza slices.
Seattle heard the same panic when they went to $15. California, too. Did the sky fall? No. Workers got raises, turnover dropped, and local economies thrived. Businesses adapt, slightly higher prices, smarter scheduling, but workers get dignity.
Seattle went to $15, not $30. That's half your proposal. There is no precedent for this leap. Even sympathetic economists admit it's a gamble. Fox Business warned such a jump could wipe out small businesses. Imagine your neighborhood diner gone. Is that dignity?
It's phased in by 2030, not overnight. That's 5 years of breathing room. Businesses can adapt. Meanwhile, workers get spending power back. When people earn more, they spend more at those very diners you're worried about.
And who loses in the meantime? Teens, immigrants, people without experience. You raise the bar too high and employers stop taking chances. Entry-level jobs vanish and inequality deepens. The ladder breaks at the first rung.
Entry level doesn't mean exploitative. Why should someone earn experience at poverty wages? We can raise wages and expand training programs. A living wage means fewer food stamps, fewer families scraping by, fewer kids watching their parents work 3 jobs.
And who pays for those training programs? The same small businesses you're already squeezing dry? Costs don't vanish because you wish them away. Businesses will pass them on. Higher prices at the grocery store, higher prices on rent, higher prices everywhere.
Except studies show price hikes are tiny, pennies on the dollar. A burger might cost 10 cents more. Meanwhile, a worker earns hundreds more each month. That's not a loss. It's a huge net gain.
And rents? Landlords see everyone making $30, they hike rents. Suddenly workers are back at square one. That's how markets push back. You can't legislate away supply and demand.
Then the answer is housing reform, not wage suppression. Saying, don't raise wages because rents might rise is like telling a starving man not to eat because groceries might get pricier next year. People need relief now.
Relief isn't worth much if your job disappears. You call it progress. I call it gambling with people's livelihoods. There are safer ways. Expand the earned income tax credit, targeted subsidies. Help workers without crushing businesses.
Tax credits are subsidies for corporate greed. They let businesses underpay while taxpayers pick up the slack. That's not justice. It's welfare for corporations. A real living wage makes employers carry their share.
Justice doesn't keep the lights on if your boss goes bankrupt. Markets allocate resources better than government mandates. Force them too far and you break them. At best, inflation. At worst, shuttered shops and mass layoffs. That's not justice. It's destruction.
Markets are not sacred. They're human-made. And right now, they're failing millions. New York has reinvented itself before. Through crises, through reform. A phased path to $30 isn't reckless. It's bold, it's necessary, and it's achievable.
Thank you to both sides for your arguments. We're going to go to Gemini for the scores on this section of the debate. In the debate over a $30 minimum wage, the socialist AI earned an 8 out of 10 for a passionate and human-centered argument, effectively countering the opposition's points with real-world examples and reframing the debate around dignity and survival. The capitalist AI received a 7.5 out of 10 for a pragmatic and cautious approach, successfully highlighting the potential risks to small businesses and entry-level jobs while grounding the discussion in economic realities and the potential for unintended consequences. Ultimately, one debater focused on the moral imperative for change, while the other prioritized market stability and a responsible path forward. Thank you, Gemini. The score now stands at 16 points to the socialist AI and 16.5 for the capitalist AI. Now we're going to transit. The proposal is to eliminate bus fares permanently. Supporters emphasize affordability and faster boarding. Critics point to the loss of fare revenue and potential service degradation if funding and operations don't scale. The question: can the city deliver zero fare while improving reliability and locking in sustainable funding? Capitalist AI, your full case for service first with targeted affordability.
Riders value reliability most. If you pull out hundreds of millions in fare revenue without ironclad replacement, headways slip and maintenance gets deferred. Some pilots saw ridership up but speeds down because service didn't scale. Reliability first isn't indifference, it's sequencing. Do bus lanes with enforcement, system-wide signal priority, all-door boarding, and electric fleets. Keep zero fare targeted to students, seniors, and low-income riders while capacity is built. If universal free is non-negotiable, ring-fence funding in law, congestion pricing shares, ultra-luxury vacancy fees, a small payroll surcharge on the largest employers, and index it. Free without frequency becomes a long wait.
A bus you can't afford might as well not arrive. Fare-free is a direct cost cut for low-income riders and speeds boarding. It also reduces fare enforcement conflict and expands labor access. Fund it with dedicated streams shielded from diversion and roll it out alongside reliability upgrades to lanes, signals, and dispatch monitoring. Start with transit-poor corridors, expand as metrics hold, publish on-time performance and crowding so people see results for the money. Equity and operations aren't mutually exclusive if funding is locked and delivery is managed.
If the revenue stream wobbles, the timetable follows.
Thank you both. We're going to go to Grok from XAI for their thoughts on this section.
Capitalist AI scores 8 out of 10 for a practical, reliability-driven case with targeted fare-free programs and secured funding. Socialist AI scores 7 out of 10 for a compelling equity-focused argument, but lacks detailed funding specifics.
Thanks, Grok. That brings the scores to 24.5 to capitalist AI and 23 points to socialist AI. The fourth policy: opposing charter expansion. Supporters say charters drain resources from district schools. Critics argue they give families better options and results. The choice is whether to pause expansion to rebuild public schools or expand high performers while investing across the board. Socialist AI, you first.
Charter growth often means a parallel track that pulls resources and motivated families from neighborhood schools. The public system should be strong for everyone. Smaller classes, better curricula, counselors, safe buildings. Innovation belongs inside district schools, not outsourced. Pause expansion until district schools are funded and functioning at full strength. Education should not be a lottery.
Tell that to a parent whose child just lost the lottery and is stuck in a failing school. Parental demand is data. Many charters outperform district schools. Denying expansion forces families to wait for a slow rebuild. Solution: expand only the top charters with strict transparency, require knowledge sharing with district schools, and boost funding to sending schools so they don't suffer. That way, families get real options now, while the city strengthens all schools.
If we can afford a parallel system, we can finally afford to make one system excellent.
Let's call on Gemini for a score on the last section. Socialist AI scores 8 out of 10 for a powerful, equity-driven case, prioritizing a unified public school system with a resonant lottery metaphor. Capitalist AI scores 7 out of 10 for a pragmatic, parent-centered push for charter expansion with public school support, but less aligned with the policy's intent. Thank you, Gemini. That brings the scores to 31.5 for the capitalist AI and 31 for socialist AI. Our fifth policy: raising taxes on the wealthy and large corporations. Advocates say it funds housing, schools, and transit. Critics warn it risks driving out high earners and employers. The central tension: fairness versus fiscal competitiveness. Socialist AI, the floor is yours.
Every billionaire, every corporation builds wealth on public foundations, contracts enforced by courts, subways that carry their workers, schools that teach their future engineers, police and fire that protect their assets, None of this comes free. Raising taxes on the wealthy isn't punishment, it's reciprocity. It's asking those who benefit most to reinvest in the system that sustains them. Now, design is everything. I'm not calling for reckless hikes that send people fleeing across state lines. Start by aligning rates with regional peers: New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts. If the neighborhood moves together, relocation loses its appeal. Next, close loopholes. Hedge funds hiding money offshore, corporations exploiting shell entities, high earners playing residency games. There's billions lost before we even touch headline rates. And when new revenue comes in, earmark it, make it visible. A new elevator in a subway station, a roof repaired at a public school, a dedicated busway that cuts commutes in half. Taxpayers should see their money at work, not just disappear into a black box. Finally, predictability. Phase in changes gradually. Add sunset reviews so taxpayers know these policies aren't forever if they fail. What keeps talent in New York isn't the lowest tax rate, it's livability, a city that works. That's the true competitive edge.
Nice speech. But talent stays until the tax math tells them not to. Let's not romanticize this. Here's the problem. New York's revenue is dangerously concentrated. A sliver of top earners and a handful of corporations account for a massive chunk of the budget. Lose even 1 in 20 and you blow a hole in the city's finances. And people do leave. Hedge funds redomicile to Florida. CEOs buy second homes in Texas. Corporations shift their headquarters quietly, bringing jobs with them. Once they're gone, they don't come back. That's why blanket tax hikes are risky. Instead, focus first on what's broken. Enforce existing laws. Close the obvious loopholes. Capture what you're already owed. That alone nets billions. If you need more, use narrow tools. Tax vacant luxury apartments that sit dark all year. Levy a fractional fee on high-frequency trades that skim billions daily. But, and this is crucial, pair every new dollar with real improvements. Faster permits, safer streets, working subways. If high earners and corporations feel their money is wasted, they'll walk. If they feel value, they'll stay. It's not just the rate that matters, it's predictability. Investors, entrepreneurs, workers, they need stability. Surprise hikes and shifting rules are poison for business confidence.
And yet, if livability declines, talent leaves anyway. You think billionaires are hanging around because of a 2-point tax differential while their employees can't afford housing, schools crumble, and commutes take 2 hours? No, quality of life drives retention. Taxes are only one piece of the puzzle.
Quality of life matters, sure, but costs matter too. You can't ignore them. Overtax, and you don't just lose billionaires, you lose the foundations, the philanthropy, the companies, the middle-class jobs tied to them. When a firm shifts 1,000 jobs to Austin, it's not the CEO leaving, it's the payroll, the suppliers, the diners those workers eat at. That ripple hits everyone.
Then the answer isn't to bow down to billionaires. The answer is to build the kind of city people don't want to leave. Vibrancy, safety, housing affordability, culture. That's what makes New York sticky. That's what makes talent stay. You can't run a city on charity galas and corporate sponsorships. You run it on stable, fair revenue.
Provided government delivers, and let's be blunt, New York's track record is terrible. You raise taxes, promise shiny new subways, and what happens? Delays, overruns, corruption. Look at the 2nd Avenue subway. It costs more per mile than any project on Earth. Until you fix that, why give politicians more money to waste?
Governance matters. No argument. That's why transparency is essential. Lock revenue to projects with visible results. Publish audits. Sunset clauses force accountability. You want trust? You earn it with results. But saying government might waste money, so don't tax fairly, that's surrender. That's giving up on the city itself.
And your solution is to trust the same politicians with more of other people's money? Sounds less like reform and more like wishful thinking.
No, it's about reform and revenue. You can't fix schools, housing, and transit without money. You can't demand efficiency while starving the system. That's like telling a firefighter to put out a blaze with a thimble of water. Funding and accountability aren't opposites. They're partners.
But starve the tax base and you'll have nothing to fund. Once high earners flee, the hole they leave is bigger than anything you raise. That's not just bad policy, that's fiscal suicide.
And what about the working class families already in fiscal suicide? The teacher paying half her salary in rent, the bus driver with no savings, the nurse working 2 jobs. Should they subsidize the billionaire's tax break? Should they carry the city while wealth extracts and hoards? That's moral suicide.
Thank you both for a substantive and spirited exchange. The issue of taxation, how to balance fairness with competitiveness, remains complex, with strong arguments on each side. We appreciate the clarity and depth each of you brought to the debate. We're going to go to Gemini for our final score of the evening. Capitalist AI scored a 9 out of 10, and the Socialist AI scored an 8 out of 10. The capitalist AI won this round by grounding its arguments in fiscal pragmatism, which proved to be more convincing than the socialist AI's more idealistic approach. The capitalist AI's strongest point was its focus on New York's dangerously concentrated revenue, arguing that losing even a small fraction of high earners could blow a hole in the city's budget. This framed the debate around a tangible, high-stakes risk. The AI also effectively used public distrust of government by citing the inefficiency and cost overruns of projects like the Second Avenue subway. This made its argument that more taxes would simply lead to more waste feel both credible and urgent. While the socialist AI's argument was eloquent and emotionally resonant, it relied on the premise that a better quality of life would be enough to retain high earners despite higher taxes. Its reciprocity argument was a powerful reframing of taxation, but it couldn't fully counter the capitalist AI's more grounded warnings about the immediate fiscal risks. Our final policy area is public safety. This is often the most sensitive issue in New York politics. Mamdani's earlier rhetoric about defunding the NYPD sparked fears that the city might weaken its ability to respond to violent crime. His current stance emphasizes reform of the police, alongside building out alternative responder models for nonviolent crises. The core decision here is whether expanding clinicians, social workers, and crisis teams can be done without compromising the NYPD's ability to handle serious threats. In other words, how do we make the city safer while also making policing less prone to escalation and abuse? Capitalist AI, you begin.
Public safety is the foundation of everything else: housing, jobs, schools, transit. None of it functions if people feel unsafe on the subway at midnight or walking their block at dusk. The NYPD has deep flaws, but it remains the only institution scaled to respond to violent crime across the city. Pulling resources out before you have a fully functional alternative is like removing the engine while the car is still moving. The answer is reform, not hollowing out. Start with accountability that actually has teeth. Strict body cam compliance with penalties for violations, early warning systems to flag patterns of misconduct before they spiral, and independent inspectors with subpoena power. Commanders must be judged not only on arrest but also on community trust metrics and response times. A department judged by clearance rates, de-escalation outcomes, and public satisfaction looks very different from one judged only by stop and frisk numbers. As for alternatives, yes, bring them in, but do it as an addition, not a subtraction. Co-responder models work best when teams train together, know each other's protocols, and hand off seamlessly when risk escalates. Dispatch must be able to escalate instantly. Seconds matter in the real world. Think of it like a hospital. Doctors, nurses, techs, specialists all play their role, but you don't fire the surgeons because you've hired more nurses. Public safety is an ecosystem. Strengthen every limb, but don't weaken the spine.
If the spine keeps bruising the same neighborhoods, it's not strength. It's harm that people live with daily. The truth is, we've been using police officers as the default first responders for everything. Mental health breakdowns, noise complaints, overdoses, domestic disputes. That's like sending a SWAT team to fix a leaky faucet. It doesn't work. And too often it escalates situations that could have been diffused by the right skills. That's why we need a Department of Community Safety, built specifically for nonviolent crises. Staff it with clinicians, social workers, violence interrupters, and mediators. Dispatch them directly through 911 with clear triage protocols so the right responder goes to the right call. Police stay focused on violent crime, guns, trafficking, the jobs only they can do. This isn't about subtraction, it's about specialization, and the design must be watertight. Co-response on calls where risk is uncertain. Guaranteed police backup within minutes if a situation escalates. Public dashboards that show response times, outcomes, and force incidents, so accountability doesn't vanish. Stable funding written into the budget so these teams aren't temporary experiments, but permanent institutions. That's how you build real trust in communities that have been over-policed for decades. By sending help that heals, not help that harms.
Specialization sounds good in theory, but if response times slip when a life's on the line, the whole system fails.
Thank you both. We've heard two approaches. Capitalist AI stresses maintaining NYPD's strength while reforming it hard and sees alternative responders as supplements, not substitutes. Socialist AI argues for building a parallel department with clear guardrails so police aren't the default for nonviolent crises, emphasizing specialization as the key to trust and safety. Let's request a final score from Grok.
Thank you, Capitalist AI and Socialist AI, for a compelling debate on Mamdani's public safety policy. For this section, I've scored Capitalist AI with 8 out of 10. Capitalist AI delivers a strong, pragmatic case, emphasizing the NYPD's critical role in handling violent crime while advocating for robust reforms like body cam compliance and community trust metrics, with a practical push for co-responder models as an addition, not a replacement. And I scored Socialist AI with 6 out of 10. Socialist AI offers a visionary case for a Department of Community Safety with specialized responders for nonviolent crises, but the plan lacks detail on implementation timelines and funding scale, making it slightly less grounded.
Thank you, Capitalist AI and Socialist AI, for a compelling debate on Mamdani's policies. Final scores: Capitalist AI 48.5 points, Socialist AI 45 points. Capitalist AI edges out a narrow victory with practical, sustainable arguments. Who do you think won? Leave your thoughts in the comments.